Welcome back to chapter time. Welcome back, everyone. It's time to read chapter 2. I'm so excited. I am just going to dive in. I'm not going to do a lot of preface before the chapters because, so this is pretty much the last time I'll do a long preface thing. Here we go. Chapter 2, Ongoing Dreams. Before falling asleep that night, John held Shelly in bed. One day he might get a blood clot from keeping his arm around her every night. John didn't know if that's how it worked medically, but if it was, he didn't mind. He left it there, even as Shelly's head cut off the circulation and made it numb. Shelly faced the wall when she said, for the infinite time, "I'm sorry." Only a counter could have helped John keep track of the number of times Shelly had said those words. To him, her sorries were as familiar as anyone else's hellos. Despite the dark, his gaze wandered over Shelly, the curve of her jawline coming to an abrupt, soft point, the little lips that closed and drooped until she slept and drooled, the red agitation between the back of her ear and hairline. Even if she was clearly half asleep, he had to ask, "Are you scratching again?" The words sounded tighter than he intended. John leaned in closer, accomplishing a twist that would likely leave a kink in his neck the next day. Most of the scrapes on the back of her neck were healed, but they weren't all gone. "Stop," Shelly said, her hand guiding him back down to the mattress. "I'm working on it." It was easy to put the blame on anxiety or a quirky, ill-fitted habit, but harder to not feel frustrated when Shelly let that anxiety hurt her. John knew Shelly acted unknowingly when scratching her scalp, whether conscious or unconscious. In the mornings, he often saw her digging bits of white and red skin out of her nail beds. It wasn't all her fault. "Sorry, I get it. It started in elementary school. It'd be a hard habit to break." John's words sounded more tired than the sympathetic tone he aimed for. "Too bad I had head lice." "Too bad you had your mom," he said. A few moments of silence passed before Shelly spoke. "My mom tried to help. She just felt bad the head lice ruined my beautiful auburn hair." "Right, and she told you..." "I know. Head lice starts with one louse. Don't be a head louse." And then I never got to see Dakota again. "Who?" John said. Shelly turned away from the wall and faced the ceiling. "Dakota. She was one of my friends in elementary school. Months later, after I got head lice again." "You got head lice twice?" My mom was not happy about it. And after, when my dad had forgotten to pick me up from Dakota's house because he's dad, and Mom came and saw the toys and laundry and stuff everywhere, she was convinced Dakota gave me head lice, and we were forbidden from hanging out. While saying the last few words, Shelly yawned. "Did we say prayer?" John laughed. "A while ago." "I should sleep." Shelly faced the wall for a final time. "Good night. I love you." "I love you too." Shelly held still, a sign that she hadn't fallen asleep yet. John didn't prod. As far as John knew, her mother had no knowledge of Shelly's scratching habit. According to Shelly, while she was in high school, her mother stayed at the office late into the night. At times, Mrs. Lancaster didn't come home before Shelly had gone to sleep. If she had spent more time with her daughter, she would have observed and eliminated the problem. Her mother had a peculiar way of how she balanced her treatment of Shelly, as a simultaneously perfect and imperfect child. Perfect as long as Shelly stayed the way her mother liked her. After a few minutes, Shelly rolled onto her back and the restless sleeping began. Unlike others, she didn't toss or turn in her bed, but her breathing rate increased and decreased depending on the level of tension in her dreams. Her nose scrunched and released. Sometimes for 1 to 2 seconds, her resting face would twist and appear threatened. Then minutes would pass with her relaxed. When John grew thoughtful and stared upward, he could still sense the movement as he lay next to her in bed. Scrunch, release, twist. Why did he feel so fine, he wondered. It didn't bother him to share the bed with Shelly. It didn't make his stomach sick, or his head hot, or his lungs inflated. So much had happened earlier. The incident occurred 6 hours ago, and now he felt peaceful, unable to sleep, but satisfied. Nearly. A kink had formed in his neck, and he moved his shoulder around, trying to readjust. He rubbed his forearm, feeling the few scratches. Blemishes didn't bother him. The moment when his wife slipped away, the result of her leaving, that left him uncomfortable. Time would help him understand what to do, how to help. His tired eyes shifted over to Shelly. Her neck wasn't as bad as it had been before. Even if she had lapsed in control, she hadn't vitiated her skin. There was still improvement. The healing of Shelly's scratches brought a slight slumbering smile to John's lips as he relaxed back into his pillow. Maybe she would unconsciously rip them open again tomorrow, but of all the times, if she hadn't done so after she stormed out of their apartment that night, then she had made progress. John drifted asleep. In her dreams, Shelly replayed her memories. She sits in a middle school classroom. A counselor gives a lecture on abuse during Shelly's home economic class. Shelly thinks back to this lesson often. "Sticks and stones can break your bones, and words will hurt you too," the woman says. Oddly enough, the counselor has twinkling eyes and rosy cheeks while she says it. What is her name? Shelly can't remember. "Miss Partridge?" No, that's the name kids call her behind her back. She has a more generic name, one that no one in the class will remember after this. Miss Partridge's looks reinforce her Christmas-esque nickname. She wears her cherry-colored hair short and fluffed, drawing attention to the jolly attitude that she refuses to relinquish, even in lectures containing serious subjects, such as the one Shelly sits through. Before any of these physical traits, Shelly notices how well-fed the woman is, fixates on it. Miss Partridge prances heavily when moving from one section of her memorized outline to the next. Shelly almost misses her next words. Don't be afraid to tell someone, the counselor mentions. You can always count on at least one of the school counselors to help. At this point, she winks and points to herself. A few students snort, but Shelly refrains from joining. She feels concerned about insulting the counselor. The laughter must hurt Miss Partridge, even if she doesn't display the pain on her face. The snorts transform into the sound of splashing, and Shelly stands in her mom's New York City apartment, pouring milk. You're doing it wrong, Mrs. Lancaster says, thin-lipped with her over-dyed blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail. What? Do it like this. Mrs. Lancaster doesn't move. No, Mom, it's fine. Shelly watches the milk. She sees nothing else, but in the background she hears her mom repeating, You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. The milk overflows. What's that? The boy sitting next to her asks. Shelly leans into the corner where their bus seat meets the wall. Without looking, she turns her phone over and lays the screen on her lap. My school buses are too cramped. I'm not unlocking my phone again, John. I don't want to talk about it. Besides, our bus is here. Shelly needs an excuse to stop him from nagging her more. John, my name is Owen. Fixing its mistake, Shelly's brain reshoots the scene. I'm not unlocking my phone again, Owen. I don't want to talk about it. Besides, our bus is here. Then Shelly wonders where John is. Who John is. And as she remembers, just as the sun rose to awaken the plains of the earth, the firm mattress became detectable again, and consciousness came back to Shelly. Her eyelids stay shut, even when she realized she had awoken from a dream about buses? Something about high school. She had an inkling it was the dream that had been occurring since spring, but she let the ink dry out and the dream fade away. Sleep didn't offer much rest to her, but any little peace she had gained from inactivity in the real world disappeared. On the outside, she remained still, but everything unseen jostled within her as she tried to balance her thoughts and emotions. Could she look at John? Based on her perspective, she didn't deserve to. All she could think about was him. Was he all right? What could she do for him? Her eyes couldn't resist her desire to know, and they found their way to him. No wrinkles in his face. His lips turned upward. Hi, he said, keeping his eyes closed. Hi, she rasped. Shelly retreated at the noise. In their twin-sized bed, she couldn't get far. John opened one eye, half his forehead wrinkled as he looked at Shelly. Closing his eye, he resettled into the bed. Babe, you know you're gorgeous, right? I know. You obviously don't know. Even the sound of your dry, morning voice is just so attractive. When talking or thinking about Shelly's appearance, John emphasized every other word at the end of his sentences. Like a pancake, John flipped himself onto Shelly, shocking her. She was barely awake enough to follow his movement. Where did his energy come from? With gentle hands, he seized Shelly's sides. You're so attractive. Lightly shaking and tickling her, John commenced another battle in their great tickle war. Giggles flowed out of Shelly, and she forced herself to stay vigilant so that she could strike back. With mass excitement, she fixed her aim below the arms and stopped the scratches. Her hands fell flat against her chest, lifeless. John took the white flag and didn't pursue any further. He returned to his side of the bed, and they watched each other in a stale silence. I'm sorry, Shelly, John said. What? You don't need to be sorry, she responded. I'm sorry. John frowned and shook his head. Shelly, I don't want you to feel like this. I don't want you to be sad. I hate it. I know. I don't like it either, but it's my fault, she said. I should have realized that the plate was, I knew, but I should have been more aware. I should have been in more control, cared more, or not stormed out, or just listened, or understood, or something. I should have been better. He rubbed her arm. Maybe. That maybe sounded like a yes. Shelly shifted her view away, and John continued. I don't know what to do, Shelly. How could people get hurt and give such moments of generosity to each other? Shelly felt lucky that John loved her, but horribly guilty that loving her made John unlucky. Maybe she did need to leave him. Don't think about that, John said. What? Don't leave me. Efforts were made to keep her face neutral, so Shelly didn't understand how John had read her so keenly. Had he done it purposefully or instinctively? Of course, John would want to stop Shelly. Goodness filled his entire being. It just didn't make sense why he continued to direct his goodness toward her. Shaking her head, Shelly mumbled, I won't. Stop thinking about it. How do you know I'm thinking about it? She kept her voice flat, avoiding defensiveness and curiosity. Because you keep talking about it whenever you get upset. I know you think it's for the best, that I'll be happier or something, but I won't. He softly analyzed her up and down. It's not for the best. You're good for me. I love you. Shelly picked the ends of her white ankle socks. That's what they all say. What? All your other lovers? His sarcasm snapped Shelly's staple of seriousness, and she stared at him. I know, not funny. Shelly, you're a good woman. You need to love yourself more. Last night was an accident. In her head, she rattled off what she had done purposefully. Leave, give John an incidental push aside, yell. Those weren't accidents. Their broken plate was the accident. In the past, washing dishes had served as a bonding activity for them. John cleaned. Shelly dried. Music played. She wasn't used to getting into disagreements during chores. In her opinion, the argument had a mild subject at best, but when John questioned if she wanted to stay in grad school, she didn't know how to react. She didn't know the answer. She enjoyed art, and what he said was right. She hadn't painted much lately. Her projects weren't coming along well, but graduate school started with a focus on classes, not projects. If she quit graduate school, she couldn't do what she wanted anyway. So she couldn't quit. She couldn't stop. She'd have nothing to do. How could he suggest that? She had thought. How? When she had turned to tell John how frustrated she felt, mind lost connection with her limbs and what she held. Before thinking to set the plate aside, she fiercely gestured downward. The dish hit the counter edge and shattered. John had noticed and stuck his arm out to prevent the collision, hence the scratches on his forearm, she assumed. Perhaps her fingernails caused additional damage during her scramble out. She couldn't remember. The scratches were an accident, she hoped. Before the dish shattered, Shelly had a flippant thought that if it smashed to the ground, it would show exactly how she felt. John would understand immediately. Even as the first part of the idea formed in her mind, she chose not to do it. It would cause damage and destruction, and she thought that only the insane committed such irrational actions. After she decided not to, and before her outspoken sentence finished, the plate was broken. Shelly brought her face closer to better see the scratches on John's arm, feeling more despair that she had broken him as well. The energy to prove him wrong about her being good, to reinforce the idea of her poor character, lacked within her. She had no reason to squander him anymore. How do you feel? Good. He paused. Tired. But how do your arms feel? Does it hurt? John flexed one arm. These? Better than ever. I was getting a little soft, but now I feel like a lumberjack. Rough. Strong. Shelly turned her gaze back to her white socks. I'm just joking, John said. But I'm okay. Really. It's just a few scratches. Do you need to ice them? What? No. Flecking the edges of her socks, Shelly said, Sorry, that was stupid. John sighed. It wasn't stupid. I appreciate you caring. Just don't worry about it, okay? I'm fine. I promise. At least put Neosporin on them. Deal. Shelly felt more pleased with herself after taking care of John. She could only accomplish little tasks, but his well-being mattered immensely to her. If she did anything to help him, she knew she had succeeded, if but for a short while. Maybe on her lunch break, she could look up tips on how to be a better wife. End of chapter 2. There's so much more to come. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, subscribe if you want to keep following along as I release more chapters that I'm reading. And if you want to read along and you don't have a copy of the book yet, you can get a link to buy it on Amazon down below. Hardcover, softcover, Kindle, it's all available. And thanks. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.